Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Thank you so much for joining. We have a record attendee actually right now. We have, a couple hundred people now that is tuned in, and it's going to be a very exciting webinar. I'm here with Jerome Chiaro. This is Matt Miller, and with today's webinar, we're going to be going over the 5 proven secrets to increasing patient screenings in half the time. And Jerome, I'm really excited about today's webinar. You know, today it's exciting, especially with how many changes are going on within this industry today and how many things are shifting, and also with the special guest that we have on today's webinar, which is Deborah Miller. Hello, Deborah, are you there?
Hello. Thank you for having me
So
join you today. Looking forward to it.
Yes, thank you so much. And everyone, we're going to give Deborah in just a few minutes some time to introduce herself and also her book that she has recently authored, Winning at Patient Recruitment and Achieving Enrollment Goals Through Outbound Telephone Screening. She has a wealth of knowledge that we thought would be very pertinent to today's conversation. And really the overview for today is we're going to be discussing the proper ways to follow with patients using different technologies, and then hopefully be screening those patients in a much quicker rate to alleviate a lot of the burden that takes place at the research. That's something that we've been focusing on heavily here at StudyKIK, and we know that this is an area of opportunity that I think some of the expertise that we'll be able to bring, as well as especially what Deborah will be able to bring to today's conversation, will be fantastic. So we always like to start off every webinar with a quote to kind of set the tone for where we are going in today's presentation. So today's quote comes from Larry Page, the CEO of Google. Lots of companies do not succeed over time, he said. What do they do fundamentally wrong? And this is the future. And I think this is something that can be applied to our industry specifically, because I think with all the different regulations that are within this industry, as well as, just there's many people with large companies, and you have to convince a lot of people to implement new strategic ideas prior to implementing something successfully at the site. I think this is something that we can be somewhat burdened by, is sometimes the time it takes to implement new strategies into some sort of presentation. So that's going to set the tone for today. Jerome, why don't you walk us through some of today's talking points, kind of where we're headed with today's presentation?
Absolutely, Matt, and welcome everyone. It's good to be back. Last webinar, just to recap, we did a great IRB webinar about IRB regulations and social media. So this one's going to be focused on screening patients and some great lessons we've learned. About a year ago in December, a lot of you are familiar, we rolled out the patient messaging suite, and it really changed the game on how we recruit patients. So we're going to go through some of those lessons and some strategies that we learned. Also, for those of you who have not joined one of our webinars before, we go through this pretty fast, so there's going to be a lot of talking points. We're going to leave a little bit of Q&A at the end, so if you have any questions, feel free to shoot us a question there on the left, and then we'll get to it hopefully, and if not, we'll hopefully follow up with a video as well too. For those of you who have joined us before, I just want to do a quick shout out to the Radiant team, Kayla Weck, Kim Johnson, Shannon Wright, health awareness teams on here. I see Ritu Singla at Hometown Urgent Care, Kristen Farr at Siegel. So we have a lot of great sites here. So thank you everyone for being with us. But today's talking points today we're going to go through is number 1, calling is dead. So a lot of your recruiters' time is spent on the phone, and we're going to talk about what to do instead. We're going to talk about texting 101, top strategies that will change the way you recruit patients. Deborah is going to go through some great tips on how to pre-screen patients, and it's not as easy as you think. Number 4 is how to follow up with patients. Content is king. And the last one we're going to talk about is how to actually get these patients into your site, how to enroll the patients, and some top resources and social tools that we use to get patients in the door.
All right, that's great. Now, let's set the stage for today's presentation. We're going to start off with some stats because I think this is pertinent for today's conversation. The first is to give you some stats around text messaging, right? The average adult spends 23 hours a week texting. I mean, that's a staggering stat. I mean,
a lot of time.
That's a lot of time. That's, if you think about it, how many times people are text messaging? I gave a presentation once at a conference, and when we were speaking, I asked everyone who in the audience who had sent a text message while they've been in the presentation, and we had about 60% of the room raise their hands, and I was only about 10 minutes into the presentation.
And that was only the people that were telling the truth.
Exactly. So this is interesting, and especially for patients too, and how we are applying this to clinical research and clinical trial recruitment. This is important to understand how people are utilizing these.
That's an amazing stat. 90% of text messages are read within the first 3 minutes. If you think about that versus email, with which might be the next one, is that is only 20% of emails are actually read, as opposed to 90% of text messages. That's absolutely amazing. And texts are read on average in under 5 seconds. So if you want to get a message to somebody and make it powerful, text message marketing is really, really changing the way patient recruitment is happening.
Right.
And then I think we just talked about this. Texts have a 98% open rate. That's what it is. So 98% of the texts you send, people will open, versus emails only 20%.
Staggering. So for today, and this is very similar to every webinar that we have done, we will be doing a lot of giveaways. So all the attendees is our way of saying thank you for everyone that's been attending today's presentation. We're going to be giving our proven text template toolkit. This is a free toolkit that we'll be providing everyone after the webinar. And this will just be really some templates that we have proven through the use of just working with over the 1,200 sites just in North America alone that have been utilizing our text messaging platform, and we perfected a lot of the outreach from that standpoint. Another toolkit that we'll be giving away today is the Patient Education Drip Content Library. We're going to be talking about this a little bit for all of you on here that may not understand what the Drip Content Library is. We'll be discussing that, but that will be something that we'll be giving away as well. And we also have a very exciting promotion and announcement that involves Uber, actually. So we'll be talking about that a little bit here at the end of the presentation. So I'm looking forward to getting into today's Talk Your Drone, and I think it's going to be a good one. Yep. So let's start with number one, right? And calling is dead. So it's kind of a staggering title to this section, but I think there's some truth to some of this. And I think this really stems from a lot of the outreach that takes place at a research site. I know myself, I used to work at a research site, and we work with so many research sites particularly. And what we see here is that, the oh my God, I'm sorry. It looks like we're getting a note here saying that the audio is a little bit choppy, so bear with us as we are cleaning that up a little bit for you all. And we're getting some text messages here. So we're saying that, okay, here, so bear with us, guys. It looks like we're having some audio difficulties here. And everyone, let us know if this is something that if this is still helpful or not. I know we see some comments coming in. Let me just double check to make sure. Sorry for the interruption here. It looks like I want to make sure that people can hear the presentation here before we get into it. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen for just one moment as we look here at the attendees. So one moment here. How's it now, guys? Can you guys comment and see if it's better or worse now? Is it better or is the audio worse? Leave us a message on the side here. Same, worse, same, worse. Okay, great. Okay, let's adjust this one sec. For whatever reason, looks like we're having a little bit of difficulties here. Bear with us as we get this here straightened out. Thank you all for your patience. So we're setting up a mic, guys. So just one second as we are putting this here together. We're hooking up a new. Okay, everyone. How is this? Is this better now?
Oh, okay, awesome.
Okay, perfect.
Thanks for waiting. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Sorry about that. Let's get back into it here. Yeah, apologies for
Okay.
for some of the glitches there.
This isn't the worst thing that's happened on a webinar. One time I had a guest speaker not show up, so that was pretty fun.
Yeah.
All right, let's get back into it.
Okay, perfect. Okay, here we are, everyone. So great. Thank you, everybody, for letting us know. Let's get into the first section here. So, calling is dead. Now, what I want to do, the landscape is really changing in the clinical trial industry. Text messaging is becoming the preferred method for most people, and this is not only in clinical research, but also outside clinical research. Most research sites do not use text messaging regularly, and many people do not answer calls from unknown phone numbers. And this is actually, all this data is driven not only from our experience and all the sites we've been working with, which has been great feedback, by the way, and we love the partnership that we have with so many sites and all the feedback that they do give us, because that just helps us to push ourselves to get that much better to be able to provide as many resources to you all as possible. But really, I want to focus on the clinical trial industry and actually ask patients specifically if this is something that they utilize, is text messaging and the importance of it. So what we did is we conducted a survey, and this survey was of 265 clinical trial volunteers who joined a trial in the last year. They were various age and multi-therapeutic. And what I want to do here is break down some of these 6 questions that we actually went through. And these 6 will kind of set the stage for text messaging as it's seen by a patient who actually joined a clinical trial. So the first is the age range. So what age range do they fall into? Well, if you look here, out of the 265 clinical trial volunteers that joined the trial, here's the age demographics. 46 to 65 plus is about 52% of the group. 31 to 45 is almost 37% of the group. 18 to 30 is about 11%, and it goes on from there. Do you prefer to communicate through text messaging or talking on the phone? Well, if you look here, text messaging, 75% say text messaging. But what we found was most research sites do not have a safe and secure way of sending text messages regularly between patients, other than personal cell phones. So, we thought that was a very interesting stat, because almost 26% said they actually prefer conversations over text messaging. How many times do you look at your cell phone in a single day? This is interesting. Almost 53% of the group, 26 or more times, right? And I think applying this to clinical trials specifically is that we need to make sure as research sites that we have the method to be able to send as much communication through mobile devices, not only via voice, but also through text messaging, as people are using their mobile phones and looking at their phones all day long. How often you go on social media in a given week? This is an interesting stat, because I think this is pertinent to also the number of people that are actually utilizing text messaging as well as internet applications and social media. So if you remember, all the age demographic of these clinical trial volunteers, 21 or more times a week is almost 54% of the group. Even, Jerome, if you look here, 11 to 20 times a week is almost 22%. I mean, that's a pretty staggering stat in terms of actual patients that are joining a clinical trial.
Yeah, I'd even say that's underreported. I mean, I've read stats that people are on Facebook, 21 times a day.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's crazy.
And I want to meet those 6 people who never have joined. just maybe it's my own piece there. And an interesting question: do you normally answer the phone from unknown phone numbers? Right. What is the most common complaint that we will hear from any research site, for that matter, whether doing any sort of media, including StudyKIK, is that no one is answering the phone, even this being unresponsive. So, and this group, though, if you look at these clinical trial volunteers, actual patients that join a trial, almost 82% said they do not answer unknown phone numbers. So when you are calling a patient who signed up for your clinical trial, and maybe there was no communication since they just initially signed up, and you're just having your site staff simply call the research site, and you're getting a lot of voicemails, this is probably the reason, because we're all screening our phone calls.
Basically, you have an 18% chance of getting that patient, and that's probably if your number's local and if they feel like if it's a good time to call and all that kind of stuff. So we're going to get into some great strategies on how to combat these issues here.
Yep. If you were to receive information about a clinical trial, would you rather receive the information through a text message or on the phone? Well, interestingly enough, almost 84% of these patients that joined the trial said they would rather receive that information through a text message rather than just a phone call. But I think what in today's industry, what we're typically doing, or the standard protocol, is to call the patient first to give them information, and then maybe follow up with some information like a text message or an email. So basically, a couple takeaways that we learned: most people prefer to communicate over text messages rather than phone calls, regardless of their age. People of all ages are constantly checking their phones, including social media and text messaging. Takeaway number 3, people would rather screen unknown phone numbers rather than just answer it. So basically, if you as a research site could address this one issue, theoretically you could have an 81% increase in response and when your recruiters are actually calling the patients to conduct the phone screens. And then the fourth piece is most people rather receive clinical trial information via text message to be able to process and consider the information prior to making a decision. Because a lot of times, too, with many of the indications that we're talking about in today's industry, especially how protocols are getting much more complex, there's a lot of information that patients are really wanting to look up. I mean, even the reputation of your research sites. Many of you may not do this, but have you ever looked at your research sites on Yelp or Google Places and see if there's reviews on there? I mean, this is something that we can, I always suggest or recommend to go through and make sure that, because obviously patients are searching for your site and looking up information about the clinical trial, maybe on clinicaltrials.gov or one of these other sites. So I think this is an area where text messaging and sending clinical trial information is very, very important. So that's great, but how do you apply these to your trials? Well, let's go into texting 101. I'm going to run us through some of these areas here and the importance of texting.
Absolutely, Matt. So I think we've established the framework that texting is crucial, and it's the preferred method of communication for most patients. Another stat for you, there's 8 billion text messages sent every day in just the United States. If you take into worldwide numbers as well, which we're actually releasing an international platform, which is exciting for SMS patient messaging suite, that's even bigger, which is amazing. The best text for clinical research, we're going to get into some best practices on sending text. What we've learned, we have a whole texting team now at StudyKIK, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, and we're going to tell you about what they've learned and what the best practices are for text messaging. So best practice number one, keep it short and sweet, one question at a time. So a big mistake we see a lot of people making when actually doing text message marketing to patients is doing, a whole 144 tweet about how, 3 different questions about the criteria and about whether they can come in and about some of the study information, as opposed to a very, very simple, what's the best time to call today? Or whatever one pertinent piece of information is, what's your birthday? Something you can get from that patient one thing at a time. So that's best practice number one. Number two is informal short codes. So you see the guy on the left, LOL. I don't know if I go as far as that, but we're talking more like if you wanted to abbreviate something or use the number 4 instead of FOUR. So that's a huge thing, because the less characters you have on a text message, the more likely they are to respond, because people just have a quick second to look at it. Best practice number 3 is instant follow-up, and we're going to give you some tools on how to do that. So the key is when they text you, you want to obviously respond to them as soon as possible. You want to get them engaged in a back-and-forth conversation on the phone. So for those of you that haven't seen the patient messaging suite that we have in our system, it's almost like Apple Instant Messenger, where you can conversate back and forth with patients instantly, and that's what you want. So how you set that up is we actually have an autoresponder, and we're going to show you a tool that you can use for your site to actually use an autoresponder. When they sign up for a trial on your website, it automatically comes from StudyKIK or wherever they're signing up for your trial, saying, thank you for signing up for this blank study. So the blank would be birth control, acne, whatever the indication is, and then what is the best time to call. So it's simple, very short, and there's a call to action. And the patients will respond with 2 p.m. or 5 p.m. or whatever the good time is. And then the recruiters go in and they respond, great, look forward to talking with you then. Again, short, it's a confirmation, and we're actually using the person's name, we're personalizing it to start establishing. This is the first step in establishing a relationship with that patient. But the important takeaway here is short, sweet, and automatic and instant is what we're really looking for. Best practice number 4, never request them to call you, always set up a time. So another mistake I see people make is they'll say via text, thank you for signing up for this clinical trial on our website. Please call us at X phone number when you have a chance. Well, the problem is that they're signing up online, they're signing up on their mobile phone, and they're trying to engage you in a text message. Now you're trying to get them to call you as a call to action, as opposed to trying to start establishing that relationship via text. So never request them to call you, always at the time. Best practice number 5 is use the indication and every word really in layman's terms. So sometimes we'll see different recruiters using PCOS or maybe some abbreviations or different terms that patients don't understand. And this is pretty common in IRB advertisements and pretty much everywhere. But it's really important in text messaging because, again, you have just a few seconds to get their interest, keep them engaged, and if it's not something they understand, they're going to instantly get disengaged with you. Best practice number 6, which is why we built the patient messaging suite and why you should use some kind of app for this, is you want to keep everything on a secure device, i.e. company-controlled apps. Patients will send, they will send you random text. They might send you a picture. They might send you something. So you want to make sure you're not using personal devices for these type of text message marketing tools. And remember, they always allow for an opt-out. So every good text message marketing software, including ours, has an allow for opt-out. They can text stop back at any time.
Great. So I think this is where we really want to transition into best ways to pre-screen patients. And I think with this, Deborah, this is where we really want to introduce Deborah and have her introduce her wealth of knowledge. Deborah, are you on the line? If you are,
I'm here.
unmute yourself. Okay. Yeah, you're loud and clear, Deborah.
Great.
So
Thank
Deborah,
you.
I'd like to introduce you and take away.
Great. Thank you. I'm happy to be participating in this webinar today. Let me just give you a little background on my experience. Have been in pharmaceutical marketing for many years. Started in clinical research about 8 years ago, CCRC through ACRP. I've worked in diabetes, pulmonary, and oncology. It is the first two that really that allowed us to focus heavily on patient recruitment. Oncology is a different kind of outreach entirely, but for more chronic conditions, asthma, diabetes, metabolic syndrome, general type of outreach is permitted and accepted. Worked in large healthcare entities. You'll see I was in California. I'm now in Utah, but worked for Kaiser Permanente and Sutter Health, and then worked in the academic centers for my oncology work at UCSD and then Stanford. I have written a book on patient recruitment, Winning at Patient Recruitment. It really does focus on sites who have a kind of a captive patient population that can do outreach via emails or physician referral letters, and then the team will follow up with phone calls. Despite the point of view here, and I embrace the new digital technology, I do believe there is a place for outbound dialing, especially when you're dealing with captive patients, and that's what the book kind of focuses on. I'm also a podcaster, so if you do go to the website, you'll be able to click on the blog and hear some of my podcasts going out. So let's get started. I want to talk a little bit about, you can go to the next slide, Matt, some of the key focuses I'll be looking at today. Preparing your team to have that outreach to the prospect. My belief is they need to be knowledgeable, and I'll go into that. I'll go into each of these 4 categories in more detail. They need to be responsive, a quick response time. I also believe that with the volume of work we all have at the sites and the number of studies that everyone's trying to manage, it's important to try to create a systematic approach to that recruitment component. And let's talk a little bit about ways to build engagement. So if you can go to the next slide, Matt. So being knowledgeable, what is really critical here is having a knowledgeable, qualified team. They're the foundation for your success with recruitment. This is your site's opportunity to make a great first impression. And yes, we're hearing that it's going to be via text, but at some point, there's going to be that human component. So make sure that the person reaching out is properly qualified. This means that they've read and understand the protocol, they understand the disease indication, and they can field general questions about that will come in from the prospect once they reach them. I'm taking this medication. Would that be okay? How many times do I have to come into the clinic? Does the doctor know what I'm taking? So you can explain to them blinded studies versus open label studies, this type of thing. The reason I'm mentioning this is oftentimes lower level staff people are delegated with the recruitment task. And there is a big chasm between the challenges that sites worldwide have in getting patients into their studies and the people they're putting in charge of the recruitment effort. And really think about that so that your site doesn't make that mistake. It is not a job for a receptionist to be reaching out to prospects to consider research studies because the team of coordinators is too busy to do it. If you do this, you risk losing good qualified prospects. And we don't want to give them reasons to disqualify the site. With that initial inquiry, they're just kind of dipping their toe in the water. Many of them don't know anything about research, so you want your recruiter to be knowledgeable and to be able to field questions in a professional manner. If you do so, your site will pre-screen more prospects and you'll enroll more subjects in your studies. You just have to make this high-level staffing commitment to the recruitment effort. And there's ways to do it and ways to kind of allocate time. This is a job of reaching back to warm leads, and it can't be done on the fly. So you want your coordinators making those, sending the texts and reaching back and hoping to be able to speak to that person on the telephone. As I mentioned a moment ago, many people have never inquired about a study before. It's their first time. They'll have questions. They'll have second thoughts about their initial inquiry. Family and friends might discourage them from participating. You need to have your best hands on deck when you're going to be reaching out to them and get that opportunity to speak to them on the telephone to schedule, to do the pre-screen or schedule that clinic visit. I just want you to recall, we've all received calls from the shy, soft-spoken telemarketer who's doing this part-time. Sounds like he or she is 17 or 18 years old. You know, we've all been there. We're walking out the door, we're busy. We don't take them seriously. We politely excuse ourselves and get off the line. Don't let this happen at your site. So I'll leave it at that. I just want you to realize the importance of knowing that the prospect is qualifying the site as well. Just that key at the bottom of the slide, again, a qualified, mature, poised, professional person leaving a voice message has a higher likelihood that call is going to be returned. Be that person. Have your best hands on deck. And we'll go to the next slide. Be responsive. Deploy those calls or texts immediately. And, you know, what I mean here is don't risk losing them. Get back to them immediately. And in this case, when I say immediately, I mean within 24 hours. I understand, again, you've got subjects coming in for their regularly scheduled appointments. You've got screening appointments. You've got monitors coming in. You've got new studies ready to launch. I know how busy it can be at the site. And I'm going to try to give you some tools to manage all of this. But avoid committing the worst and most common offense in clinical research, allowing warm leads to wither and die. Don't let it happen at your sites. The new digital tools are generating buzz, and they're creating warm leads for you. And what's really exciting is the new trend that was just mentioned earlier about, you know, brochure type of information and deeper levels of information are going to be going out via text messaging. It's really going to create a wonderful tool for the team, but your team has to be ready to corral those inquiries and respond quickly. And Jerome even reinforced that. That quick response via text and by telephone, it brings that human touch into play and heightens their interest and engagement. I mean, my recommendation, hit them with a double play if necessary. Text outbound once you've gotten that initial inquiry, and hopefully they'll reply back to you. And if you don't hear back from them, you know, dial the number. That is the same number, so you've got the text and the cell number to dial them from. So you're able to do that. But here's an example of an outgoing text message from, we'll call her Allison, at your site, using the StudyKIK tools with a new prospect. Her text could read, "Hello, my name is Allison from the Huebner Clinic in Salt Lake City. You expressed an interest in the ELITE diabetes study. Thank you." I wouldn't say it, you know, I sound kind of emphatic and hard when I say it that way, but just say thank you. Is now a good time to call you to discuss the study? So there she is, and she's introduced herself, and she's explained why she's calling, and expressed gratitude. And can I call you to talk about the study? If she doesn't hear back in 10 or 15 minutes or so, I'd follow up again with a phone call. And we'll go into, again, a number of outreaches later on in my presentation. but I thought about how coordinators might try to schedule this whole recruitment aspect during their day and kind of schedule recruitment time. And I kind of came up with a simple idea of allocating certain times to respond to the texts and or to make those reach back calls. And here's how it might work. You would create a system whereby certain times of the day your coordinators are recruiting. And the rationale is this. The StudyKIK leads, my understanding is they're going to be dribbling in throughout the week. You'll go to the site, to the portal, and there'll be a few on Monday, and there'll be a couple more on Wednesday. And, do you randomly go to the portal like 4 times a day to see if there's a StudyKIK lead type of thing? Or do you kind of create, next slide, Matt, do you kind of create a more systematic plan to manage this? I've created a simple table, and anyone can customize it their own way. Basically, it includes weekly receipt of leads. So this would be March, and these are actual March days in 2017. And this is a sort of a completed table, but during that first week, eight StudyKIK leads came in, and Allison was assigned that week to oversee the recruitment and to go to the StudyKIK site and to pick up those text messages. And is she responding within that 24-hour time frame? She has received, 8 leads, and she's been able to conduct 5 telephone pre-screens. And maybe there are 4 clinic screens scheduled. Again, this is a follow-on to her activity. Toward the end of each week, she would fill this out. This is just an example of how a site might organize their reachback texts and or calls. I'm aware that texting appears to be used increasingly, but more so than the phone. So text them, but track your outcomes. If the StudyKIK leads are dribbling in throughout the week and say it's Allison's week to handle them, then the incoming leads will go to her. She should make every effort to take time each day to text and or call back those new prospects. And she might even offer certain time frames during that week when she can call them back. This could be preferred because, it would be difficult for her to go to the StudyKIK site 4 or 5 times a day and have these several random times when people are requesting callbacks, and she's in a clinic screen with someone and there's a monitor there, and there are too many things going on throughout the day to have it handled so randomly. That's just my thinking. It might work well for another site. Organized chaos can work. But here are a couple of ideas. For example, her text or voice message to that StudyKIK inquiry could go something like this. I can telephone you any morning this week between 8:30 and 10. You let me know what day and time works best for you, and I'll call you. We'll be on the phone for about 5 minutes, give or take a few minutes based on your questions. Then that would be a response to texts that would come in early in the week. Then for those texts or leads that come in on Thursday or Friday, her reply could be, I can telephone you tomorrow morning between 8:30 and 10. We'll be on the phone for 5 minutes, give or take a few minutes based on your questions. For the Friday call, I can telephone you any morning next week between 8:30 and 10. We'll be on the phone for 5 minutes, give or take a few minutes based on your questions. So basically, Allison has done her job. If if the site has decided that whoever is assigned that week, between 8:30 and 10, they're going to try to focus on their recruitment, and they're really permitted to do that exclusively, and that's something I'm going to talk about in a few minutes as well. She's done her job here. She's reached back to the interested party. She's given them time options for the callback, and she's kind of built in a time frame in her workday to focus on the recruitment. I don't know about you, but I like to have a kind of consistency and order in my life, especially with all that goes on in clinical research. So then at the end of the week, Allison, again, will fill in her columns on her worksheet with how everything's gone forward and progressed. Next slide, please. Building engagement. So I'm going to talk a little bit about once you're on the phone with the prospect and doing a telephone pre-screen. Here's your chance to build that sense of engagement with the prospect during that warm call, because again, they've texted, they're interested, you've texted back, you've scheduled an appointment, you're given an opportunity to do a pre-screen. Learn how you sound on the telephone with prospects. Record yourself. Practice as a team. Make it the topic of one of your weekly meetings to listen how each of you sounds on the telephone when you're talking to a new prospect. Listen to your tone. Is your tone clear? How's the pacing as you're reading that IRB approved and required pre-screening script? How's your timbre? What is timbre? Timbre is your tonal quality. Are you clear? Are you conversational? Is there warmth in your voice? Think of yourself as one of those gals on Good Morning America or guys on Good Morning America. Your this is your recruitment. You're the star. Think about how you're coming across to people once you do get them voice to voice. So that's really important to kind of practice and kind of come up to speed on. You have the technical knowledge. You are the research experts, and now develop your communication skills to impart that effectively to a prospect. Develop a sense of professionalism and sensitivity. This is so important when asking sensitive health-related questions. Protocols will vary, but some will require information on medical use, history of cancer, HIV status. You need to show sensitivity when asking these questions, because some of the answers will be yes. And you need to develop a sense of empathy, of sensitivity. And this is another reason why you want qualified people doing the pre-screens and really kind of at the forefront of the recruitment. Again, going back to what I stated earlier, you're being qualified by these prospects. They've never even considered research, and this is a new and unmarked territory for them. Show them that this is a professional organization, and there are professional people at the helm. Protocol knowledge, I mentioned that earlier. Be able to answer their general questions. When you are in a recruitment mode, you need a quiet place where you are completely uninterrupted. There should not be any multitasking. There should not be chatter with coworkers in the background. You should not be in an open area. Never in an open area where patients might be within earshot, because you might use their name, and that would be a HIPAA violation. You need to be in a place where you can focus exclusively on that person during that pre-screen. And with these text messages that are coming in and converting to pre-screen calls, you're going to have 4, 5, 8 pre-screen calls that are going to be going on, hopefully one after another, and you're just cranking and scheduling clinic screenings. So you need to be put in a place where you're away from everyone, and that is why I kind of recommend that time frame for the recruitment for your team members if they're assigned that week to do it. The prospect will feel your attention or lack of attention during that phone call. So it's really critical that you are focused exclusively on that task and on them during that period. When if we engage once we connect by voice, then there's an opportunity for us to deliver the message and for them to consider the opportunity. And patient recruitment is about that person-to-person interaction and communication. Gratitude. Let me get to this. I feel like I'm a little bit long-winded here. Don't mean to be. Thank them for inquiring with StudyKIK, as Allison did initially. Thank them for taking your call. Thank them for their willingness to pre-screen. And finally, if they screen and schedule, thank them for their willingness to be considered for a research study. The gravity of your gratitude is enormous. Know this and take it to heart. Those of us who work in research, we often forget to properly thank our study subjects, and never, ever miss that opportunity to show your gratitude for their participation. When I was in an academic setting, we received a letter from someone who had been in a study, and her final statement was, "I would have appreciated a token of a gesture of gratitude. I just never heard thank you very much." How sad. So I urge you, to recognize that these people are golden to us, those who are willing to participate in research. And they are having a big impact on changes in healthcare and movement toward improved therapeutics worldwide. Just their little old ordinary selves, they're key to that. So we need to show that kind of gratitude. Make them feel good about the possibility of participating in research. You can do that if you feel good about your day. You can do that if you are relaxed, if you're rested. And I know there are days where you're not feeling quite that relaxed and rested. That's kind of why I'm encouraging the recruitment time to be earlier in the day rather than later. If you're feeling good about your task at hand and your team's involvement in the study, if you're fresh, it shows and it comes through. Don't make these calls when you're stressed. Don't make them when you're trying to multitask. Don't make them when you're on your last nerve. It will not work, and they will feel that level of stress. There's a quote here from the late Maya Angelou. It is this: I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. So do your best to make them feel special, important, and appreciated. Gratitude is essential. Okay, let me get scooting along here. This is just a little kind of a chart to remind you. You've got a IRB-approved script, have that in place, and your pre-screen database ready to deploy so that you can do those pre-screens quickly and effectively. My recommendation, weekly pre-screen assignments to the team. 1 week it's Allison, next week it's Sharon, next week it's Allison again. You know, don't put the heavy burden on one person, but just distribute it evenly. Dedicated time to call, no interruptions. As I mentioned, a quiet office, quiet workplace to do that outreach to those StudyKIK inquiries. And the calls should be conducted by the research team who have knowledge of the protocol, the disease indication. And then you're also building a rapport because you're going to be seeing those prospects when they come in for the clinic screen, and hopefully they'll convert to enrolled subjects. And that will lead to clinic screens. And yes.
Deborah, question on that real quick, actually. And this isn't
sure.
just for StudyKIK leads. This is for any media, right? That they, basically the sites can apply these, basically, these aspects to any leads for that matter. Correct on what they are seeing.
Yes, absolutely. I'm talking about converting a telephone conversation to a pre-screen, and then that pre-screen to a clinic screen. Yeah, it applies to all. Yeah. Okay,
Perfect.
next.
So then when it comes to leaving a voicemail, I think you got some great points on this. Can you briefly touch on some of these points and the importance of leaving a proper voicemail?
Right. Okay. So as I mentioned a moment ago, quiet office, no noise or chatter. I can't stress enough the importance of this quiet work environment when you're on the telephone with a prospect or on a voicemail. It's your opportunity to exude professionalism, show the utmost in professionalism and decorum. Remember, as I said earlier, they're qualifying your site. Give them a good impression. Be relaxed. If you're relaxed, it will come through in your voice. Even if your voice messages will be scripted, it's no big deal. Just read it in a conversational manner. It becomes easier and more conversational with practice. Repeat your number twice. I do this even with social calls. Half the time people don't get your digit, miss 1 or 2 digits, and they might not have access to your number because this isn't a social iPhone to iPhone call. You might be calling from a landline at the office, and it's not going to pop up on their smartphone. So they just repeat your number second time. Okay. Finally, a couple of other final tips. Follow the regs. Do you have a question? Did I hear a question? No. Follow the regs. Use an IRB-approved screening script. Keep it simple. 8th grade level. Of course, the IRB will oversee that part of it. And develop online survey questionnaires for the pre-screen. Many off-the-shelf products out there, and then you can just kind of click through. Again, your pre-screen's only going to be, 12, 14 questions. Minute and a half, 2 minutes, not going to be lengthy, so it's easy to create. Use Microsoft Office or Google Calendar to schedule your clinic screening appointments. Remember to use their study ID number. Create one at that point if you're needing to, but don't put their names in the calendars. That's also very risky. HIPAA violation. And continue to reach out to prospects up to 7 to 9 times. So they've texted, and you texted back, and you haven't heard back from them. Keep reaching back to them by text, and reach out by phone if that's possible as well. They continue to be warned, and they won't be annoyed to hear back from you 4, 5, 6, 7 times. It's okay. What typically happens is they apologize to you for being so hard to reach once you finally reach them. So don't be afraid. Use your texting and use your phone as a tool, and just have a great time with it. It does become easier, and it becomes a lot more fun, and especially when you add that human touch to it. And that's it for me.
Great, Deborah. Thank you so much. And I know that all the information can be put into a lot more detail, even more so in your book. And I know this link, we'll also put that link here in the chat for everybody as well. There's a lot of great conversation on in the chat function on today's webinar. And what I want to talk about now is really what we learned from past pre-screeners, kind of taking the information that Deborah just talked about, and really a couple of things that we learned from pre-screeners and how to simplify the process. One, asking redundant information, age and date of birth. I know that's information that we get even a lot of times in the initial pre-screening, but even when you're screening a patient, and if they're providing that information multiple times, that's a way that you can even speed up that process a little bit. Also asking, do you have any major medical conditions that we should know about? These are all great questions for pre-qualifying, and obviously if there's particular criteria that you're looking for to make sure that that is being addressed. And then screen for multiple studies. This is one area that, at least from a patient standpoint, let's say you have a patient that signs up for a program, but for whatever reason does not qualify for that program. If information is being discussed and you have another protocol that you are enrolling for at your research site, then that might be an area of opportunity for you to go ahead and screen that patient into that trial as well.
Absolutely, and I think for us that's more from a sponsor education perspective that we want to do from the site and from StudyKIK what's more important for the patient and allow them to get into a research study, not just their research study.
Mm-hmm. And then also the last piece is to ask for referrals. This is always a great opportunity. I think that especially if you build the trust with someone that is going to be wanting to join the trial and at least coming in even for the consent visit, even asking for referrals. This is a great way actually to enroll for trials, maybe even are time sensitive, including those that may be enrolling for maybe people who have the flu or something of those types of programs where time is of the essence. Referrals can be the best source of recruiting for those types of trials as well. So this leads into the fourth section of our webinar, how to follow up with patients specifically. So remember, it takes 7 to 9 points of contact, even more so for clinical research. So John, walk us through the formula a little bit on what this looks like for showing up with the patients.
And this is good timing. I'm trying to read the questions here as they come in. We'll get them at the end, but a lot of people are saying 7 to 9 points of contact is is a lot, and it sounds like a lot. But let's think about this and spread it out. We're not talking about calling them 7 times in a row, and also to Deborah's point, we're not saying eliminate calling either. We could see that in this schedule, calling is very, very important still. But what the paradigm shift we're trying to establish is that texting is kind of the new first thing that we do. So we want to first text them, get them engaged as much as we can via text, and then send them an email, which we do instantly. And then if they do respond with the time to call, then call them. That would be contact number 3. So we're already at 3 points of contact, and we haven't pestered the patient too much. Now, if they haven't responded to any of those, I might send a text the next week saying, hey, John, are you still interested in this study? Please respond yes or no. And if the patient responds yes, then continue to engage them. If they respond no, I would not contact them again about that specific study, maybe a future study. Or I might say, hey, great, would you be interested in staying in touch about future studies? And they might say yes. And then number 5 would be to call about the study. If they don't answer, I might leave some kind of content follow-up on their voicemail. For example, hey, just wanted to stay in touch about this birth control study. By the way, we have a Facebook page, or we're doing a Facebook Live event, or whatever event's happening with your research site, right? To get them not engaged in that specific study, but in the actual content of what's happening around your research site. And then number 6 would be a text, I don't know, maybe in a month or a couple weeks with a content link. It could be to a video. We have some great videos that we're going to be sharing with the audience here about what kind of, some content about what's it like to participate in a clinical research study. What should I expect on my first screening visit? I mean, there's tons of education still to be done, and that's what we try to do at StudyKIK before they even hit this part for you guys, is to get them as cleared as possible on the research process. But you can continue to do that and engage them. And what's interesting is we got an email from a patient the other day. I looked at their email. They said, "Are you still running this study?" This was like last week, and the first time they signed up for this trial for the site was May of last year. So it took them 8 months to respond to an email, but they did respond to it, and we're keeping them in the loop. So just because they don't respond the first time doesn't mean necessarily they're not interested. It just means they're not ready and they haven't trusted your recruiter or your research site yet to join the process.
So I think the key aspect here is to engage often, right? And I think there can be some confusion mixed around if it's harassment to continually follow up with patients. But I think we're not talking about following up with patients over and over and over for even a particular trial, but it's to educate about the clinical trial process in general. For those that are not responding about the trial they signed up for at your research site, and if you're continuously just asking the same question over and over, are you interested? Are you interested? Are you interested? I think that could be a little bit considered as a harassment, and there's ways to contact people at multiple different points to keep them engaged, or at least get them to trust your organization before joining the clinical trial process.
And don't forget, you always want to have an opt-out process. At the end of every text message sent from StudyKIK, it says text stop to stop, and if the patient text stop, that means they're opted out of our system, and you can never text them again. And you want to do the same on email as well too. So if you're engaging them with these tools, you want to give them options out, which keeps them more engaged. So it looks like people were saying our audio went bad again as well. Apologies for that. Hopefully this is a little more clear for you all. And really what we want to do here is continue to add value. Send videos about what it's like to join a clinical trial, for the indication, etc. So we're going to give you some tools on resources from where to get some of this information. SysGroup is a great organization to get a lot of information for patients specifically. Additionally, we're also going to be giving you the StudyKIK content library for everyone that will be joining today's presentation. At the end of this presentation, we'll be sending it out here later this week. You will have access to that, and that'll be content that you will be given access to send to your patients, as well as here are some resources that you can actually help craft and send content to as well. Aweber is fantastic. It's an email marketing service that you guys can, anyone can use it. It's quite cost effective, and the deliverability rate is very, very high. So this will allow you to be able to send information. And then Fiverr is a place that you can actually have content created for you to be sent out, or maybe videos, something of that nature. It's a great place. There are actually contractors you can hire for literally $5 per project to get that information done. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but it's something that's good to give, to give people. So let's talk about the paradigm shift a little bit, Jerome, and why it's important to form a team. Sure, and something we learned over the last 6 months to a year is that our StudyKIK qualification team, we started using a separate text team, and we would recommend this to do this for yourself as well, to set appointments. So obviously you're spending, like Deborah was saying, you're spending a lot of time hearing a high-level medical recruiter or rater text patients, which is honestly not a good use of their time and their expertise. So what I would recommend, and what we've been doing with our text center, is having a whole team just to schedule appointments. So when a text message comes in, that's all they're doing, via whether it be the StudyKIK portal, whatever system you're using, is text messaging patients back and forth and getting good appointments to talk to your recruiters. And if the recruiter calls and the patient does not respond, then the text team goes back and is following up again with all these ideas, different content things, different ways to re-engage the patient if the patient is still interested, and trying to reschedule them for the text center and for your recruiters. A great tool is Google Calendar. So once we set an appointment, so the patient says, okay, I'm interested in this birth control study, 2 p.m. on Friday, please give me a call. Okay, great, we'll call you then. Now our text team goes in and adds an appointment to Google Calendar. Now we can see all the appointments for the day and see see how busy our recruiters are and if they need help with any certain areas, which has been great. And we can tell you more about that later as well. Also, this keeps your raters and your medical recruiters free to do what they do best, which is to actually screen the patient in the study.
Okay, and the fifth and final section is how to enroll patients. So basically everything that we've learned so far, how can we apply this? In today's media, with all the engaging social media platforms and media outlets, engaging through these different platforms is of the highest importance. I think a lot of sites may not utilize this to some degree. Some may do a little bit. For those of you that may be utilizing Facebook or email marketing or regular text messaging, something of that sort, there's many people that can, or many research sites that are engaging very, very well. But just to give you some snapshots here on the type of information that's being shared and how people are sharing it. So, for example, and also considering that survey that we gave in the age demographics, here's the number of pictures that are shared on different social media platforms. And this is actually interesting. This is actually on a per day. So basically 350 million pictures are shared on Facebook every single day. 400 pictures on Snapchat. Text messages, 400 million pictures are shared on text messages, as well as Instagram. 55 million pictures are shared daily, which is interesting. And just to break down how many people are on these social media platforms and why it's so important for your site to utilize these platforms to keep patients engaged. I mean, this is a quick demographic breakdown for you here. And we'll be sending out these slides just so everyone knows. This webinar will be sent out to everyone who had to maybe leave early, or for those that are going to be leaving early here. This will kind of give you the breakdown of how many people are utilizing these platforms. And Facebook Messenger is something that is a great tool for many sites to utilize. You can actually message your patients that are coming on these different social media platforms, or even Facebook, for example, and have live chat conversations with them back and forth through an application that they're using regularly, as well as Facebook chatbot. Now, Jerome, talk about the Facebook chatbot a little bit and how this is really changing recruitment and automated follow-up.
Absolutely, Matt. So I'll give you actually an example here about how we've been using Facebook chatbot. And what this is, it's an automatic tool for the Facebook Messenger. Since once again, your recruiters are busy, they don't have a whole lot of time, but you want to engage them because people do message your Facebook page, whether you like it or not. They're going to be engaging your research site, and hopefully you want to encourage that. So one thing we've been using for our pages is a chatbot, which actually engages the patient in an automated, fun way. So here's what it looks like. This is the patient just on the left there saying, get started. And this is, hello, this is ADHD Inspiration. Here are your options. And we give them a couple options. And if they're interested in research, they have to text or the message back research studies. Then it automatically says, please reply with only your zip code. We will send you the nearest research studies. And this could take a couple hours. They respond with their zip code, and then we send them an actual link to the correct study. So that's kind of a fun way we found to engage patients in Facebook. We can go into that more later too. Another tool we use a lot right now and that you can use for your patients is short codes. So here's what a short code looks like. And if you have a cell phone handy, you can actually try it out right now. If you text the word migraine to 67076, this is an example of a short code. It's going to send you a link. It's a little bit.ly link that links back to our website where the patients can actually, once again, search or sign up for a clinical trial. And you can do this for your website as well, which is really nice. So this is how you engage patients off of Facebook or other ways to engage them via their text messaging. Another important option, when you get that text message response with the bit.ly link, it's going to have a mobile-friendly landing page. All these patients are on their cell phones, whether it's social media or text messaging. So you want to make sure all of your website information is mobile-friendly. If it's not, check out a really great tool called unbounce.com. I think they have a freemium version, or it's relatively inexpensive, and you can create great mobile-friendly landing pages.
And that's pretty easy to utilize as well. So that's a great tool for those sites that may not have a system or developer that's creating landing pages for you. This is a great way to do it on your own very, very quickly. Another one is Call Loop. This is a great service. You can actually utilize text messaging platforms. Even if it's outside of StudyKIK, to set up your own text messaging platforms, Call Loop is a great tool to go ahead and utilize and very cost-effective as well.
And real quick, I see a couple chats. For those of you that want to try it out, text the word migraine to 67076. Another free text messaging tool, and I've seen a couple in the chat as well, is Google Voice. You can actually text patients for free there. Once again, it's not as clean as a secure HIPAA-compliant platform like StudyKIK, a similar patient messaging suite. So but it is a tool that you can use. Let's get into the exciting announcement, Matt.
Yeah, so a couple of really neat things have been happening, and this is actually because of all the feedback we've received from you all, as well as all the patients in our patient communities that we are continuously building, is that the need for connecting all of this text messaging and follow-up into transportation and actually having patients get to and from screening visits. So what we have done is actually formulated an integration now with Uber, which is fantastic. So we're going to be calling this the Patient Transportation Suite. And what this is going to be an interface where you will now be able to schedule actual Uber rides for your patients back and forth. And this is something that we've been working on for a very long time. We're the first company to be doing this with Uber, to actually be utilizing this on a corporate level. So we're very, very excited to roll this out. Uber is actually the largest public transportation app out there out of all of them. So over Lyft and over all these other companies, Uber has the widest range, and this is very, very exciting. And this is something that's going to be really, we think, revolutionary, and applying this to patients and now increasing the patient's experience even more so, right? Letting them have a more positive impact on getting into a clinical trial, and even to show, you talk about that relationship building, right? Deborah talked about that a little bit. Now, as a research site, you will be able to provide these transportation to and from the appointments for the patients, and even better yet, we actually ran this by IRBs, right? Because the first question that comes to everyone's mind is, well, is this okay to do? Do we have to get IRB approval for this? What is that? And basically, before we get into that, I want to talk about the IRB standings here, is that we actually ran this by word just to ask them, is this something that has to be reviewed? Because if it's not written in the protocol for some sort of compensation, this is something that we'd have to change. But basically, we had this reviewed by the board, and here's exactly what they wrote and shared with us, is since they're not providing payment, which is the sites, since the sites aren't providing payment, but they're just covering expenses, they do not see a problem with it. It seems no different than handing someone a parking voucher when they come for a screening visit. So this is very, very important and very exciting, because now we'll be able to apply this to all of your studies as well here in the very near future.
Exactly, and what's great and how we're building it, it's in beta right now, so we're going to announce how to sign up for the beta at the end of this. But basically, you can schedule Uber rides through the StudyKIK portal, which is going to be exciting. And then billing-wise, we can bill it back to the sponsor, or you can use your StudyKIK reward points to claim rides. There's going to be a bunch of ways to claim free rides as well too, which is exciting. So we have a great special deal that we're announcing with Uber pretty soon here, and we wanted everyone to know on this webinar what exactly is happening. Matt, why don't you walk them through just real quick, how the Uber system works?
Sure. So basically how it's going to work is one, your site is going to confirm the patient appointment in the My StudyKIK portal. So you basically move that patient over to the scheduled column. And basically from there, you'll be able to set the Uber appointment through StudyKIK. Once that appointment is set, that patient's going to receive a text message. We're talking about text messaging so much today. That patient will receive a text message and an email that will notify them about the upcoming transportation on the date that they are going to be having that transportation provided for them. And the same thing will happen for when the patient's going home as well. You schedule that through the app, through StudyKIK.com, and that'll be sent right back to the patient as well. And this is going to decrease the no-show rate drastically. We've actually done this test pilot a couple times at a couple sites with great success, so we're very excited to roll this out kind of on a grander scale. And especially we're going to be rolling into all of this today as well, for everyone that's on the webinar. In addition to all of the things that we're going to be giving away here, for those of you that joined today, if you are thinking about listing another trial with us at our platinum level, diamond level, or ruby level listing, and you add the patient qualification suite, we're going to give you $200 off, and we're going to include you to be on the list to be the first site to test this Uber ride, and we're going to get free credits for the Uber transportations. So it's going to be a very exciting offer for everybody. So basically, it's going to be up for 24 hours, right, from the special that we're going to be doing for everyone. So platinum, diamond, or ruby listing, you add the patient qualification suite, which is our pre-screening service in our pre-screening department. Once you do that, we will add you to the list to basically roll out the Uber for your site to use. And basically, the way you're going to claim that is you use Uber on checkout. So if you list a study, use the promo code Uber, that'll give you the $200 off, and your site's going to be added to the list to roll out the Uber beta, which is going to be great for all of those sites. We're very, very excited. And again, before we do conclude this presentation, I want to say thank you all for your patience on the audio difficulties that we did have. We will be sending this presentation out so everyone will be able to review it again. And then we also want to thank you from everyone here at StudyKIK for all the great work and support that you all have been providing StudyKIK. We are now servicing over 1,200 research sites just in North America. We launched Europe last year, and we launched Asia at the very end of the year as well. So we're expanding greatly, and we wouldn't be anything without you guys and all the feedback you've given us to help us create these products, and we're going to continue to do so. There's a lot of great and new exciting things we're going to be rolling out here even within this month. So stay tuned on that. And Jerome, any final comments from you?
Sure, and we have a lot of great questions. So again, I hope we can get to some. If everyone could stay about maybe 10 more minutes, we have, because of the audio difficulties, we'll spend an extra 10 minutes. Deb, if you have to run or you could stay, that would be great.
Sure, that would be fine.
Maybe you could take a couple questions, and then we will hopefully be doing a follow-up video with some additional questions. So feel free to hit that chat box on the left, and we'll get to them. So let me scroll up real quick here.
And if there's any questions that any of you have about the content that we've been talking about today, please go ahead and put them in that chat window that everyone's been talking to on the webinar. Go ahead and do that right now, because we're going to be going through all these. And we're not going to be able to get through all of them as well, because we have many even that are being emailed to us as we speak. And we're actually going to be doing a video following up with this, so we'll send to all of you as well with the answers to all those questions. But if there is a question that you've been thinking about just from the content that we've been discussing today, go ahead and type it there in that chat window, and we will go ahead and try to address as many as we can. I know there's a lot of them coming through here. A couple that I did see coming through were fantastic things about if it's, I think one I saw that was particular to the amount of follow-up time, 7 to 9 points of contact. And I just want to stress the point of that it's not being coercive or maybe, a little bit difficult for the patient to have so many follow-up points if they, in fact, are not interested in the trial. And I think it comes to a point where as long as you're building that relationship and whatever that looks like for your site, we just give key steps and key tools to help you do so. So contacting a patient via email or via text message, something of that nature, in addition to the outbound calling that you're doing, every single point of contact is going to be helpful for that patient and ultimately establishing that relationship. So I hope that was a little bit clear. So Joe, why don't we get into some of these?
Sure. We're getting a lot of questions on Uber, which is great. Feel free if anyone has any questions for Deborah or about some of the text messaging platforms. We can talk about Uber real quick. What are the costs for the patient qualification suite? It is $847, and that includes text messaging follow-up, $894, and that includes text messaging, our patient messaging suite, so that includes that suite, and we basically pre-screen all the patients for your protocol and your other studies. So if it's a migraine protocol for a specific sponsor and you want to basically pass through the cost of that sponsor, we're still going to screen the patients for your other studies just like your site would, which is great.
Here's a great question actually coming in right now about how we would set up those pre-screen questionnaires. I know those can be difficult because a lot of times these questionnaires can take some time, and I think too, in the setup of those questionnaires, it's best, I think, to break down some of the more complex questions as well as notify the patient about how long it's going to be or how long that pre-screener is going to take ahead of time. Just going to give them a frame of reference, and even that can even be done so via text message prior to getting them on the phone to make sure when you're setting that time up, when you have that text message goes out to the patient, what's the best time to call you today, see if you qualify. They say today at 2 o'clock. You can say when you're confirming, say, great, it'll take about 10 to 15 minutes to conduct that pre-screen, and then you can go through it from there. And I think the main thing is you want to focus on criteria that is the most common reasons why patients are not qualifying for the program, and also to make sure that they are, qualified. And a third piece that is a lot of times patients have to send in their medical records, right? And that can be a difficulty for them. So just give them options, give the patient options to do so, and then even set reminders for yourself to remind the patient just to make sure they get those to you, because that's kind of a common area that we see, especially in some of the notes where people are waiting for the patient's, before they can consent, or waiting on the patient medical records. So that's an aspect to definitely focus on and make it as easy as possible for them as well.
More questions, Tina and Wade, about the patient transportation suite. It's in beta right now, so we should be announcing. We don't have a set date and we don't have a set cost, Tina, so we're going to have to get back to you on that. But those of you that would like to sign up for the beta, please do so, and you'll be the first to know and the first to get to pilot this thing.
And you'll probably be getting the full details on that here within the next week. So we're going to be putting out all that information, and then you'll be the first to be able to test it and really give us your feedback. And it's going to be at a discounted rate when we're initially testing it for those that are wanting to try it out and see how well it's utilized and works. So with that, Jerome, why don't we do if you want to take one more question, and then we're going to go ahead and do a video for all those questions. And for those of you that may have more questions that come up after this presentation, you can go ahead and send those questions to me personally if you like. That's Matt, MATT.Miller, MILLER, at StudyKIK, STUDYKIK.com. And I'll try to get back to you with all of those questions answered, as well as we'll do a video.
Okay, quick. Couple more questions. Yes, we will be having more webinars. We try to do at least a couple per year. One a quarter would be great. So we'll keep you posted on that. Vince had a good question. Logistically, with StudyKIK, sometimes it's difficult to organize patients. Have you had any comments about this? Vince, absolutely. Yeah, we'd love to hear feedback. We've actually have a new platform rolling out. We're hoping it's going to come out this month, if not next month. And it's basically the new version of the StudyKIK portal, and there's a bunch of different ways to organize the patients. So now there will be an actual whole section for the patient messaging suite, so you can access that from any part of the portal, and it'll have all your patients in one spot. You can actually add tags to the patients, like if the patient signs up for a migraine study but you find out they have acne, you can tag them with acne. And then we have a patient database feature where you can search by indication, age range, BMI, all different types of information, pull up databases, text blast and email blast patients. So there's a lot coming. If you have any specific comments, feel free to email us as well too.
Yep. And just to give my email again, I see a couple questions of those asking for my email. My email is Matt, MATT.Miller, MILLER, at StudyKIK, STUDYKIK. Jerome's going to go ahead and type it in to the chat window as well, so you all have that. And we'll do a follow-up video, and I want to thank you all for joining. If there's no more questions here, we'll go ahead and make a video for the last one. So looks like Jerome has one more here.
One more. This is a good one, Hannah. And I saw you ask this earlier, actually, about lifting the character limit with texting. So the issue with that, and we used to actually run it like that, but we want to keep it super simple. So like, for example, when Deborah was walking through some of the questions, I would break it down into every single question you have, just break it down into a separate text. So if you're asking them what's the best time to call, get that response and then say, okay, great. It will take about 10 minutes for this survey, for this pre-screener. Is that okay? Question mark. Yes. You know what I mean? So try to break it down as much as you can instead of trying to put all that information into one text message. It's much more effective and much more engaging. It's hard to for patients to see all that information for one blurb. And if they start to see a large text message that breaks up automatically, if you've seen that before, a large text that gets broken up, because you made it too long, you start to lose trust on the patient's end, and they think it's spam and they think it's not from a real person.
Exactly. And before we leave to Deborah Miller, I just want to say thank you so much for your time today. Your expertise was very well received, and we appreciate
thank you. You're welcome.
You talking about your book and everything. Yeah, it's always a pleasure, Deborah. And again, thank you to everyone that joined.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be part of it.
All the information. Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Great. Thanks.